Good afternoon, Stoke. Good afternoon, Stoke. Wonderful to be here before you. Now, I've been talking about uh, waste to energy, etc., in uh, uh, outside Liverpool. So now I'm going to talk to you about changing Stoke. Now, Stoke is a fairly impoverished city. It's number 13 in terms of deprivation in the UK, which is pretty bad actually. And it's not one of those memorable places that you go to and go, wow, I went to Stoke and therefore I have now I've now completed my tour of the UK. Sorry, I was just doing a live broadcast.
I was going to plug my phone in. I know it's
Well,
going to get off again.
plug your
No,
phone
darling,
in.
but it's going to go off again as well. So no, I'll do it upstairs. Don't worry.
Just
Sorry.
I don't know what I'm going to do now because it was
Just
okay, fine, right.
let me know in future.
Right, hello again. Sorry for the interruption. Um, Stoke is a city with a population of around 300,000 or something like that. It has 110,000 households. It produces 110,000 tons of waste per year, of organic waste per year. That's the public waste, municipal solid waste. We don't know how much retail waste there is, but it's probably not far off the same amount, maybe a little less. That waste can be turned into a total of 44 million household hours of electricity. So, in effect, uh, the amount of hours of electricity is 2.5 kilowatts. So we can produce 1,833,333 hours of household electricity uh, per day, per year. Per year. Now, what this means is you can convert the waste into hydrogen, and the hydrogen feeding fuel cells. This isn't the total amount that is required um, by Stoke. In fact, 2,646,000 hours hours of total electricity consumption is required by Stoke. So it's about 806,000 hours short. But that doesn't include retail waste. Now, the interesting thing about retail waste is you actually own it because it's retail. In other words, you bought something that has generated that waste. And if it's generated that waste, you own it. So it's clear that you have an overabundance of the ability to produce household hours of electricity. So you change the waste into hydrogen. This can be done relatively easily. It is not as complex as people would make you believe. Then that in itself can be turned uh, uh, into electricity through fuel cells. And again, this isn't so difficult. In fact, actually, the fuel cells could be made in Stoke, and they could be made by collaborative manufacturing enterprises. In other words, enterprises whereby the ability to be able to produce the fuel cells has been provided by an intellectual property holder. And that's us, with the help of other collaborative manufacturing enterprises, which are required to provide support to new ones. In other words, you could have a new collaborative manufacturing enterprise designed to build the fuel cells and the waste to energy systems for the benefit of the community of Stoke. Now, it doesn't mean this happens overnight, but it does mean it can be done without having to go to the large industrial uh, electricity providers, particularly not nuclear, etc., or wind, or indeed uh, photovoltaic. It means that Stoke could be self-sufficient in its energy requirements. What is the cost of this? Well, the initial cost is 5.5 pence per kilowatt hour. Currently you're paying 25 pence per kilowatt hour. After 5 years, you would be paying 2.2 pence per kilowatt hour. Now, this is actually the wholesale price. So consider this. You start an electricity supply company. So each community, sections of Stoke, could produce their own electricity supply company to supply their own subscribers. And those subscribers would, in effect, own the electricity being produced by this method. So all of a sudden, you become the electricity provider for yourself. What does this require? Well, not a huge amount, actually. It requires a collaborative manufacturing enterprise that can start with 3 people and be built up. And it can eventually supply the demographics of about 3 million people throughout the area of Stoke and surrounding towns, Uttoxeter and places like that. So it can branch out. And it could be owned by the people who actually make the fuel cells. So it's self-propriety. In other words, the people who make the fuel cells and make the systems own it themselves. Now consider this. If you're getting electricity at 5.5 pence per kilowatt hour, you can afford to increase that cost to, say, 7.5 pence per kilowatt hour, which is the lowest cost of electricity in the UK wholesale. So now you're retailing at 7.5 pence per kilowatt hour. The difference between the actual cost could become a community source of income, and that community source of income could be used for the general good. And that means that issues such as educational standards, the retirement homes, hospitals, you name it, would be able to be funded directly from your own electricity requirements. But more is the case, because with this system, you would also be producing your own water and you would be producing your own heat. So your costs would come down and you'd be able to benefit from the value of the supply of what we call a TUS, or total utility system. It would also employ people. It would employ people at decent wages. So now, instead of actually piling on funds in order to keep uh, others rich, such as, for example, the waste management of Stoke is probably run by one of two companies, either Veolia or Suez. That would go. So you would no longer be paying to have your waste taken away. That waste would become your resource. The second thing is you would no longer be paying the electricity companies, which are privatized for the most part, for your electricity. You would be paying directly for the electricity yourself and reaping the rewards thereof. So accordingly, from being a deprived city, Stoke could actually become a model for what every other city could be in the UK. It could be supplying its own electricity, building its own systems, building its own technology, and that can be done simply by a decision. So it's your decision to look at whether or not you can do this. I'm quite happy to help you in any way. I'm a visiting fellow at Staffordshire University in Stoke, so I'm always available and I can be contacted there. I have actually reached out to Stoke City Council and the leaders thereof, but I've never had a reply yet. And I suspect that either they haven't received the correspondence I've sent to them, or they have and they don't understand it, or they have and they do understand it and don't like it. One of those three things. There's the only three possibilities. So there you have it. An ability to be able to not only get cheap electricity, cheap water, or zero cost water, reduced cost in terms of your council waste management programs, lower rates, and profitability that can go back into the community. And that's what I'll leave you with. Think about it.